Welcome to Canada's podcast.
Hello, I'm Mario Toneguzzi, and this is Calgary's podcast on Canada's Podcast Network. Joining me today is Trevor Haynes, President and CEO of LodgeLink. Thanks, Trevor, for joining us.
Thank you, Mario. Pleased to be here.
Well, let me just start off by asking you, what the heck is LodgeLink and what do you guys do?
Well, LodgeLink, it's an exciting business that we started from scratch a few years ago, and what we're focused on is providing enhanced services or full cycle travel related to crew travel. So where companies are needing to move their workforce to where their work is, there's all kinds of complexities and inefficiencies. So as simple as finding and booking where they're going to stay, or seats on airplanes, et cetera, but then much more into the software that builds into our platform to help them with duty of care, to track all the costs, to improve the efficiency of all the payments that happen in behind, reconciling everything. And then most of our customers are service companies. They're being able to efficiently invoice their customers. So it's a big endeavor, big addressable market, and we've made great strides putting a fantastic team together, and we're having a lot of fun.
So tell me like a little bit more of like the types of clients that would use you.
Well, it cuts across many different industry sectors or segments in terms of companies that in the services they provide, their workforce needs to move to where the work is. So if you think of construction, especially construction into smaller town areas or even remote, from a Canadian perspective, certainly the resource sector, many of the service companies need to move their crews to and from where the workflow is. From a Calgary perspective, obviously our energy sector, but it's many sectors, including energy. So if you think of any business where their workforce has to travel, so we're looking after companies that do rail maintenance for railroads, highline power maintenance companies, all types of construction companies, certainly oil field services and mining services customers. So anywhere where they're moving larger groups and they have to deal with all the logistics related with that type of travel.
So you're basically helping them find places where their workers can stay and facilitating that process of getting them there and taking care of all that, right?
If you think of it as a marketplace, so on the supply side, we have hotels. We've got over closing in on 7,000 properties in terms of accommodation. So those would be hotels, lodges, remote camps. On the other side of the marketplace are those companies that need to move their team members, as I mentioned before. And so, yes, being able to find the most appropriate property for their needs, close to where the work is, be able to sort by price and amenity, and then to be able to make that commitment. And it's a little bit more difficult versus the B2C, if you think of the big online booking tools like an Expedia or a Bookings, where you're moving smaller groups of people. When you move larger groups of people, you need a different type of booking engine to be able to make that booking. But then we go way beyond that. So how do you manage who's on the cruise and the editing? Is, if you can imagine, you make a booking, but the crew gets delayed on the last job they're on, or the company changes which crew is going to go and do the work, or even who's on that crew by the time they get to that site. And then the rotation of which crew members are on and which are off as they rotate on and off their shift cycles. And so you just keep adding those layers of complexity. And that's where there's a value proposition for us to create a platform and build the tools, software to be able to deal with all of those complexities of workforce travel for business.
Takes away a lot of their headaches, I guess.
Exactly. Very inefficient. The Global Business Travel Association tracks this as a subsector of business travel, and it's called energy, resource, marine. Those are the type of industry segments that have large amounts of crew. And pre-pandemic, they tracked the U.S. Spend of businesses for crew travel at 63 billion, Canadian at about 7 billion per year. So it's a big addressable market. And the estimate is there's upwards of 10% of that spend is wastage in terms of missed bookings, bookings that never got used.
Wow.
And then within that, you think of all those people and they're being paid by the company. If they get delayed somewhere and you don't make the adjustment downstream for all of the bookings that come after, then that's where you get into inefficiency. So our ability to solve for that is the value proposition.
All right.
So it's a big opportunity. We're finding it's a lot more complicated than we thought when we first set out, though.
So, and when did you first set out? What year did you establish this?
We started building LodgeLink in earnest in 2017, 2018.
Okay.
It's been growing very quickly recently. Fairly substantial interruption from the travel lockdowns because of COVID, as you can imagine. So there's a bit of an interruption in our buildup. And LodgeLink is, I started with some co-founders, a company called Black Diamond Group, and I started that in 2003. LodgeLink is a subsidiary, so this is sort of our latest entrepreneurial start and build within the Black Diamond portfolio. So it's a continuation of the work and building we've been doing for years. Okay,
I'm curious now. So what does Black Diamond do as kind of the umbrella? What other kind of ventures does that have?
Well, the main expertise of the Black Diamond team is understanding the requirement for workforce accommodation, but using physical assets. And so we're quite well known as being one of the big camp providers in around the resort sector, and using, modular buildings so we could move them into remote areas, fit them together to create these big living environments, and then figuring out how to generate power, handle waste and water, et cetera. And so that's where sort of the knowledge of the requirement for crew travel and all of the various challenges that come with that. And so that was sort of the genesis from which we said, well, maybe we could offer a different type of service and use technology in a different way in terms of the industry that we're associated with. And so that's where LodgeLink as a new idea came to fruition.
So in terms of setting up a new venture, so to speak, what were some of the biggest challenges you think you face as entrepreneurs?
Well, when we first started Black Diamond, the parent company of LodgeLink, a lot of challenges. Is this the right thing to do at this point in my career? Would we be successful? How would we fund it? Had a young family at the time, all the uncertainty of whether we should take this big risk, and make it happen. As you work, in subsequent startup of businesses, and I've been involved in building many of them. The concern of, would this idea work? Will this work? Should we invest here? And there's a lot of debate. And in some ways, it's more complicated starting businesses within businesses. So we couldn't get the idea out of our minds. And at one point in time, there's a lot of debate. Won't work, will work. And we said, we're gonna try this. And so as quickly as possible, trying to get to proof of concept. And then equally as challenging is, okay, the concept works. Now we have an enormous lift to get this scaled up and bring all the talent we need and funding it. Question is whether we will create value, for our customers, et cetera, but value for our shareholders. So it's always very exciting. There's always an element of risk and uncertainty, but it's very creative. It's probably why I like building businesses. I like the creative part of it, creating new things and trying to bring great people together to make them happen.
Where do you think that came from? I guess passion, for creating stuff.
Yeah, I guess from a very early age, and very early on, my father was part of one of the early group that was involved in building a company called ATCO. And I know you're from Calgary, so you know ATCO. And at one point, parents are Alberta families, but we were moved to Montreal, and they were building the international side of ATCO, and Montreal was sort of the international business city in the 60s and 70s. And the ATCO guys would come and they would stay at the house. And I was a young kid. They would sit around the table, and they were very intense, and it seemed very exciting. They were building and serious. And I can just remember sort of standing at the edge of the dining room table, listening to these guys and thinking, I want to be part of this. And perhaps that's where it started. And, through school, I started little businesses and would hire my friends from school to work within them. And we remarkably got some contracts to landscape some of the restaurants that were built along McLeod Trail in those days. Did all the various landscaping and hired I don't know what it was, 16, 17 years old, and would collect people. But I never really thought of it. I always talked about wanting to go into law, et cetera. Later on, reconnected with family, friends from Montreal, and sort of told the story, and they're like, yeah, we knew that's what you were going to do. And said,
it's kind of interesting, right? Because for people that may not know, and listeners that may be outside of Alberta, ATCO has been a giant. He's got many different aspects of ATCO, but it all started from that remote work accommodation concept, right? Of providing that here in Alberta.
Yeah, just a fantastic entrepreneurial business, especially in those early years, and quite remarkable what was accomplished from a small group of people from Alberta, and built a global platform. So I'm sure I gleaned some of it from there.
Did you ever meet Ron Southern?
I did. I worked at Spruce Meadows as a kid, and they invited me in. My father had left and started his own business way back in the 80s, but they invited me in to work on some projects. I'd written my LSATs. I had left. I was in the financial world, and left to take some time off before going to law school. I said, well, I only have a few weeks because I'm going back to school. And it was really interesting. And I left 10 years later, and I learned a lot, did business all over the world. So that was sort of where I learned, the industry that I ended up building Black Diamond into, and that now LodgeLink is sort of the next iteration of understanding here's a problem that needs to be solved, and could we be the creative people who are able to solve it and deliver a lot of value in the whole travel chain. So
does the name Black Diamond come from the town?
It does.
Okay.
A lot of people ask us, are you a skier? I love sports. I love everything about sports, and but I'm uniquely untalented at everything. So no, it isn't. It isn't about skiing. It's the town of Black Diamond. So we have some family properties nearby, and we started Black Diamond. We thought of all these great names, but most of them were taken. And then having a beer in the Black Diamond pub. And
the hotel there, right at the corner there, the main corner.
You know it. That's where it was.
I know it quite well.
What about Black Diamond? Nice connection to one of the first oil finds, and looking to be in the camp business. And so that made sense. And I love the idea that it was something so we could create an emblem anyway. So yes.
Yeah, I
Many
love that.
people make that connection, but you've got it.
I love that corner because you turn right at that. Well, depending on what's direction you come, and you head south, and my favorite place in Alberta, Longview, and head down there for the jerky and sit at the saloon there and enjoy. So I love that
country. For me, I think it's just beautiful country.
Yeah,
through that area, Longview, Black Diamond, Turner Valley,
etc. Yeah, no doubt. What do you think as a business owner operating in this province, right? And at this time, what do you think the advantages are of operating in Alberta?
It's interesting, Mario. I had an amazing opportunity to work all over the world when I was with ATCO. And it gave me a fantastic context in terms of every time I would come back to Calgary and just how great a business city, how efficient, just the concept of risk sharing and the expertise that gathered in the city. And even the way the city was laid out and how efficient I viewed it to be. And I think that's one of the key advantages, that and sort of the spirit of Albertans, strongly independent, but very collaborative. And so when you talk about risk taking and trying new things and building, I think it all connects to the character of Alberta.
Yeah.
That plus good economic policy, from a competitive perspective, but I think it has much more to do with sort of the history and culture, which makes it a great place, I think, for building a new industry. We can use those skill sets of entrepreneurialism and risk sharing and all the great expertise, whether it's legal or accounting or engineering skill sets, and take all of that advantage and apply it in a new and different way. So I'm very optimistic, and I still think one of the best, if not the best, business cities on the planet for entrepreneurialism. Absolutely.
And speaking, just being an entrepreneur, what do you think are some of the qualities, I guess, that someone needs to have to be a successful entrepreneur?
Well, you absolutely have to be an optimist, because there are many things that would tell you you should just copy what other people have done and take a safe path.
Yeah.
And so you need that view that I'm confident there's a different way, confident there's a better way. I'm confident that I can convince those people who are much smarter than me and each of their skill sets to come and see the vision and say, yes, we can make this happen. And so I think there's, partly a generalist, partly somebody who just thinks outside of the box and just wants to create something different and do things differently. Sometimes I call it the path of most resistance. Rather than the path of least resistance. Yeah. But it is, for me, the most rewarding, when it works.
Yeah.
Built something and you see a lot of people being successful within it. It's extremely rewarding.
Yeah. It's not for the faint of heart, though, right? Because you're going to go through a lot of challenges.
When you work for other businesses and you think you know what working capital is, well, when you've set out and you've got your own construction company and you've got, as we did, we had 300 laborers in construction trades, and payroll's due on Friday and your customer hasn't paid you yet. That's not for the faint of heart. You're laying awake at night and you're like, oh, this is what working capital is.
Yeah.
So no, there's an element of risk to it. but perhaps that's why it's such a reward when it works, because there's a lot of risk when it doesn't. Yeah. Anyways, it's I absolutely love it.
Super. Well, thanks very much, Trevor, for joining us today.
Thank you. Thanks for taking the time to listen about LodgeLink and to talk about our great business city in Calgary.
All right, super. That was Trevor Haynes, President and CEO of LodgeLink. I'm Mario Toneguzzi. This has been Calgary's podcast on Canada's Podcast Network. Thanks for joining us today.